Welcome to Virtual Wine Circle. And in our series of talks for the Wine Circle, Bob asked me to do a talk about what I know best about winemaking, and that's making garden wines. Mostly it's known as you made wines out of what? We're going to talk about the golden rule of garden winemaking, where to do research, what places are good to look at, what places aren't, edible versus medicinal wines, because there is a difference between the two, and using spices and herbs in home winemaking, using good judgment, because not all of us have it all the time, inspiration, where to find different combinations for your wines to make them interesting, not interesting in the normal sense of the term, but interesting for your palate. How to make a garden wine approach. If you're new to this, it's a lot harder than you think, but I have developed a pretty good approach, which I think has worked so far for me in most of the cases or most of the wines that I've made. I'm going to give you the general recipe that I use and some other points like what yeasts to use. Following this, and after you've watched this, I'll be online in the Virtual Wine Circle to answer any of your questions you might have. But before we go on, cheers, and here's to garden winemaking. So, the golden rule of winemaking: when in doubt of any characteristic of a plant, do not use it. And I mean anything that there could possibly be with that plant. Do not use it, because rather be on the safe side. And remember, there are more inedible plants in your garden than there are edible ones. A good example are daylilies. They're also called sewer lilies because they grow oftentimes along the ditches of the road. Those are edible, believe it or not, they are. But what are not edible are the hybrids, the Stella d'Oro, for example. They have many, many different hybrids of daylilies, but those aren't. So if you're not sure, even for a common thing like a daylily, I wouldn't use it. And that's what you have to keep remembering throughout walking through your garden or your allotment. Be careful with what you use. And to find out what you can use, that's where your research is really going to be paying off. I do not trust Wikipedia. It's great for learning about a city. It's great for learning bits and bats about different things in general, but it's not peer-reviewed, which means anybody can write anything in there, and there's no real moderation of it. That's what makes the Wines at Home forum so wonderful, because there is plenty of knowledge there that will help you in finding out which plant is edible or which is not. That's the one place I would definitely go to. It's the Wines at Home forum, because there's pretty much somebody online 24 hours, 7 days a week. If there's not, it's just about a few hours of waiting, and all plants will hold for those few hours that you need to find out about them. Another great website that can be very trusted is the Jack Keller's winemaking website, and the website address is listed on the slide. I would definitely go there for the list of edibles versus non-edibles. It's a great reference place, also for recipes, as most of you probably already know. The library is also a great place to get some research done, as the librarians themselves are usually incredibly knowledgeable about many, many different aspects of life. And winemaking, or at least plants, is one of them as well. But there's also plenty of books on herbs and plants which are edible, which are not in the library. And I would definitely go there if you don't have the right book at home to find out what you're looking for. Another good place, and I know this is probably going to cause some discussions, but The First Steps in Winemaking by C.J.J. Barry is a great book for making unusual wines, because there's a lot of stuff that he has gotten from the roadside in his wines. His recipes perhaps should not be followed, but it's a great place to find out what you have growing in your backyard, if that could be used as a wine. An example of what I did when I didn't do enough research and I trusted Wikipedia and other small little internet sites is what I like to call killer wine. It was actually called Kiss Me Under the Mistletoe wine, but I have renamed it now Killer Wine. I got dried mistletoe one year, and I thought I was going to give this as a gift for Christmas. I started the wine actually, and I posted it on the forum. The post is probably somewhere, or maybe I deleted it out of embarrassment, but mistletoe is poisonous. It is deadly poisonous. And instead of kissing everybody under the mistletoe, I probably would have been burying them had I pulled this off or had gone through with it. So I really would not trust any other sites than the ones that I listed, and real reference books that have gone through editors and publishers and tons of different things. I really, really strongly suggest you really follow those rules. Now we come to the topic of edible versus medicinal wines, and there is a difference, and it's basically the difference in the concentration of what you're making. And edible is just about everything that's also medicinal. For example, chamomile is, I'm sure a lot of you have made chamomile tea wine. That's great. Dandelion is also great wine if used in the right concentration. However, if you add a lot more than what the recipe calls, you're starting to have a more medicinal quality to your wine, which is probably, in most cases, or in the case of chamomile and dandelion, is probably okay. What it is not okay is if you're taking other medications that could counteract with them. And that's why I always say follow the recipes really to a T for garden wines and herbal wines. What you do not use are purely medicinal plants. Sounds simple, sounds common sense, but not all of us have it. So don't use them, and make sure you do your research. For example, foxglove is used in digitalis. That is a heart medication. Lily of the Valley is deadly poisonous, so please do not even think about it. Just sniff the flowers, but don't drink the wine. And deadly nightshade is also highly medicinal and is used actually at your eye doctor to dilate your pupils. So do not use that internally, not a good thing. The take-home message is, when in doubt of any characteristic of a plant, do not use it. I really want you to remember this whenever you're walking through your garden or your allotment. Don't be afraid to use spices and herbs, not only the things that are in your garden that where you think is good for salads or pizza, can also be used for wines. And I have, as you see, a few of them here. Some of them have been used, spices and herbs. Each herb, spice, or petal gives its own unique flavor to a wine. It might not be a good base for the wine, but it's also an addition, oftentimes. As you had seen in the Virtual Wine Circle talk by Colin Tweed, he does the same thing with his elderflowers. And this is plenty of other things you can use for your winemaking to give that a little bit personal touch. The good thing about spices and herbs are that you can use them anywhere. You can grow them anywhere. I don't have a big apartment, but I still can grow herbs on the windowsill. I have a little garden. I can grow them there. So anybody can really spice up their wines with their own spices. Herbs can also be a nice addition to your garden. It's not only tomatoes and not only cucumbers, but a lot of them even flower. Such as the picture on the slide. That is a wonderful sage bush. Not mine, I wish it was. I live in too cold of a climate, but it is a perennial if the climate is right. So if you like the smell, taste, or color of an herb, you might as well try it in a wine. You might even like it. But let me tell you, use good judgment. And this is another thing with the take-home message. If you're unsure about anything, probably not a good idea. Or do not use it. Use your sense of smell, not just what you think should be in a wine. Because I've made some wines that have been really, really good just because I was bold enough to try it. Don't use too much of anything. As the saying goes, too much of a good thing is bad. So don't use too many herbs. Remember that they're potent. And remember, use fresh things. Do not use stuff that's been in your grandmother's cupboard for 20 years, because it's going to taste like a wine that's been oxidized just about for 20 years. And remember, if it doesn't sound like a good idea, it probably isn't. And I'll give you a little anecdote again about one of my wines. You all know that I do make some unusual wines, and one of my very first wines was cabbage wine. And I thought this was going to be great for sauerkraut, for stews, and maybe not for drinking as a social wine, but I made it in April in 2004. And since then, not one bottle of it has been opened because the smell was just absolutely horrendous when I bottled it. I probably should have dumped it, but it was one of my first wines, so I backed off after that on using cabbage wine. But don't be biased. Some of you probably think, oh my God, cabbage wine, how could she? I've made onion wine, I've made chrysanthemum wine. Here I have a beautiful rose petal wine fermenting just now. A lot of things that you don't maybe think about fermenting. Not only can you have great food to eat from your garden or your allotment, but you also have some great winemaking ingredients from there as well. A few further examples of what I've made so far and have turned out quite well, have won in a few competitions, are chrysanthemum wine, even tomato basil wine, my so-called pizza wine on the forum, is really, really good. Like I mentioned, daylily wine or chocolate mint. Sage or rosemary nutmeg wine is a wonderful wine which has taken first in a few competitions in the United States. But the best thing that I've ever made and has really done well in competitions and with friends and family is my juniper wine. And even I can say the people who've tasted my juniper wine always want more. Ask Bob. And keep your eyes open for inspiration. I think there's so many different places where you can find great combinations. If you're not sure if something will work, look in cookbooks. Look at bouquets of flowers. Even salad dressings, your favorite foods. What do you have there? Like I got the inspiration actually for pizza wine from my favorite snack of fresh mozzarella, which I did not ferment, fresh tomatoes, and fresh oregano. So there are plenty of different places for you to get your inspiration. And also don't forget herbal teas. I know a lot of you people think they're hippie teas, but even hippie teas make some pretty good wine. I've made hibiscus rosehip tea wine, and that has also taken some prizes and some competitions. So this is what you need to do to make a good garden wine. It'll give you a general idea of what your unusual wine will taste like once you're finished. You have 2 glasses. In the first glass, you make the tea, just like you normally would make a tea of anything else. Pour boiling water over it, infuse it for maybe half an hour to get it strong, and smell, check for color, clarity, aroma, taste, just what you would do for a good wine. Then add a little bit of sugar, then add a little bit of acid, maybe even some tannin. Tweak it a little bit until you find what tastes good for you. If you don't like it, you only have half of a glass or half a mug of tea. And take good notes. This is really important in general in winemaking, taking good notes. How much did you put in? How much is too much? And so on and so forth. So that's your first glass. The second glass, you pour half of what you have in the first glass, add the same amount of wine, a white general wine. I know most of you have wine number 1, so that might be a good wine to add, in a ratio of 1 to 1. Then taste it, check all the things like aroma. Again, tweak it. Add sugar, add acid, add tannin if you need to, and again, take good notes. Because the glass 2 is going to be how your wine kind of tastes with the vinosity in it. And that's really important. Instead of waiting 3 months for your wine to finish, you're going to know basically what it tastes like the first day you've tried it. So, there's an optional glass 3. You can add both cups together and then just see if that even tastes better at a lower concentration, at a higher concentration. So just really use your taste buds. A lot of people don't use this in their winemaking, and I'm a big fan of tasting the must, because you get so much out of the must that you might miss if you didn't. You can do a lot with numbers, and numbers are important. SG is one of them, pH, TA are a few others. But your taste buds are just as important, and in all of that is what makes a good wine. Winemaking can be considered an art and a science. I am a scientist by occupation, and numbers are extremely important when making wine. However, I also think of winemaking as an art. Because I make unusual wines, I don't ever have a guide. I have to rely on my taste buds to determine if a wine is right or not, for me. However, I'm not saying that the numbers aren't important. What I am saying, though, is both can help you in your winemaking. And I really think using both approaches, taste buds and numbers, is the best approach in making wine. Some people would disagree. Some people are the geeks and rely on numbers alone, Brix, pH, TA, but they forget about taste. And I believe winemaking is all about the taste. Ha! I don't know. So this is the general wine recipe I use for 1 gallon of fantastic garden wine, and you can pretty much use this for just about anything you have in your garden, such as petals, herbs, and so on. I use 2 liters of Fresh Garden Harvest, loosely packed, 1 crushed Cannon tablet or equivalent, a teaspoon of acid blend, a teaspoon of nutrient. Optional are Energizer and Tannin, a 1/4 teaspoon of pectinase, because you never know how much pectin an oregano leaf has, so better be on the safe side. I use a liter of white grape juice or 250 milliliters of white grape concentrate. And this is where we get to a little bit more general winemaking. I fill up the carboy then to 1 gallon. So water up to 1 gallon, but I leave a little headspace because I add the sugar then afterwards, and I use sugar to an SG of about 1.075, 1.080. It depends on how strong you would like your wine. I do this because then I know what I have. I know what SG it will be. I know the starting gravity, I know the ending gravity, and then I know the alcohol content. If I say to you 2 pounds of sugar, I don't know how much sugar an oregano leaf might have. I don't know if chrysanthemum petals have more sugar content than an oregano leaf. So this is what I do. And it's been working out for me pretty well. So I would suggest you do the same. A few off topics. I've been asked what kind of yeast do I use for these unusual wines. I'm a big fan of Lalvin 72B 1122. I'm a huge fan of Red Star Montrachet. It's a good all-purpose wine yeast that really lends the fruity aroma to the wine. Some people would disagree, but I've had pretty good experience with it. Of course, there are plenty of other yeasts that you can use, and you probably have your own favorite. Try it out. Do some trials. Which yeast works better for which wine you're making. So, some words about garden wine. Some wrapping up some words. You can use dried herbs or petals. It takes about a year to age a good garden wine. They have the most interesting colors, like I have to show you again. This was white grape concentrate and just the rose petals, and I think this is just a beautiful, beautiful color. You get very, very unusual colors, and the colors from your garden, which makes your wine even more special. Remember, have fun and be creative, and tell us about it on the forum or a virtual wine circle. We'd love to hear what you've made from your garden. And remember the golden rule of winemaking: if you're in doubt of any characteristic of a plant, do not use it. And I mean any characteristic. If it's the smell, if it's the color, if it's anything, do not use it. Please promise me you will not use it. And just to wrap up, don't knock it until you've tried it. I know a few people who have had my onion wine and haven't thought it too bad. The smell is not the greatest, but the wine itself is pretty good. So don't knock it until you've tried it. And again, just our take-home message: you are all at home, so your keep at home message or take in garden message: if any property of a plant is questionable to you, any one at all, do not use it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I'm glad you're a part of the virtual wine circle, something new and exciting in the wine world. And once you see some more of our talks in the virtual wine circle, I really hope you'll encourage others to join as well, because this is all what it's about, is having fun and meeting new people and drinking good wine. Thank you. Bye.